Good morning, boys and girls. It's Monday. Welcome back from spring break. I hope that you guys were able to have some fun over spring break. I know that my plans for spring break were definitely different than what I thought they would be, but my family and I still had a fun time. We chose to find the joy and the hope in what we had. So I hope that you were able to do the same. Today, my friends, we are going to start a new book called The Stout-Hearted Seven. It looks like this. Now, if we were in our classroom, each of you would have your own copy of this book, and we would read it together, and you would follow along with me. But since we don't, we're going to make do with me reading it to you. You will also need for these videos this packet that I sent home with you with your Chromebooks. Okay, it looks like this. Okay, and inside there are different pages with different activities for each chapter. Okay, so today we're going to start chapter 1, and I'm going to give you a little background on it as well. So this is a true story. A true story means that it actually happened. These people that are in this story were really alive and on the Oregon Trail. So I want you to remember that as you listen to the things that they went through. The first thing that we're going to look at is this map. I'm going to try to get it all in the screen. So this is a map of the United States. Okay, the Oregon Trail basically began in Independence, Missouri. That's where the Oregon Trail, that's where people that were going on the Oregon Trail started. Okay, this dark line right here is the path that the Oregon Trail followed. And this is the path that the characters that we're going to read about follow. They're going to go and they're going to hit different forts. Now, while the pioneers or the people that were going across the Oregon Trail, while they were going across, they would come to forts. Now, a fort was a very small place that kind of was like a store. There were things that you could buy there. It was a place that you could rest. And there were people that actually lived at the fort. And they tried to help take care of any of your needs that you had. So as they left Independence, Missouri, they traveled up across several rivers. They're going to go up to Fort Boise, which is in Idaho, not where Boise is right now, but it's there. They're going to go up to the Whitman Mission. Now, the Whitman Mission is a real place, and that is in Walla Walla. Some of you may have been there before. And we're going to talk about the Whitman Mission quite extensively. Also, the map continues on over to Oregon City and Fort Vancouver, and that's going to be important in part of the story as well. So here is the Whitman Mission in Walla Walla, and then over toward the coast is Oregon City and Fort Vancouver. All right, let's start with Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Catherine woke to the sound of fire crackling and the pleasant smell of wood smoke. She raised her head enough to look across the room to the big fireplace where Papa stood shaving strips from a stick into the coals from yesterday's fire that had been covered with ashes through the night. Then he laid a bigger piece, and the blaze leaped up and burst into a flame that sent pink shadows wavering over the pine ceiling above her head. She lay back to watch the colors come and go. Somehow the ceiling looked strange. So did the rest of the room. Now she remembered. This was not the house where she had lived for most of her 8.5 years, that everyone in Platte County, Missouri, knew as the Sager house. Her father, Henry Sager, her mother, Naomi, and the 6 children had moved over here yesterday, 5 miles from St. Joseph, near the Missouri River. She remembered the lovely red and gold leaves on the ground and the deep blue of the sky. The most beautiful time of year, Mama had said. Papa said that they must always remember this fall of 1843 when they started for Oregon. They could not go across the plains and mountains until next spring, but this was the start of their journey. And how lucky they were to be able to rent this cozy log house for the winter. So they moved from where they were, about 5 miles, over to a rental house that they were going to stay the winter. And then when spring came, they were going to start on their trip to Oregon. Oregon. Catherine lay back to think about it. What would it be like? Her brother Frank, who loved to tease, whispered stories of Indians lurking in the woods. Remembering his tales, Catherine shivered and drew the blanket over her face, for she feared Indians more than anything else in the world. She heard the squeaking of the cords that supported the straw ticks in the other big bed, then the sound of Mama padding across the bare floor in her old red and yellow carpet slippers. The door creaked open, letting in a whiff of cold, fresh air. This was Papa, going out for a pail of water from the well. She heard the splash as it poured into the black kettle that hung on the crane over the fire. "Frosty outside," he said. "We moved just in time to get settled before winter." Papa stepped across the room to the foot of the ladder leading up to the loft, where his 2 sons slept. "John! Frank! Time to get up!" "John, you go milk Bossy while your mother cooks breakfast. Frank, hustle down here and bring in your wood and water." Catherine uncovered one eye to look at her brothers. They said they were not afraid of Indians. They wanted to go to Oregon. John's pleasant, round face appeared untroubled as he lifted the milk pail from the hook on the wall. At 13.5, he was almost as tall as Papa. His straight brown hair hung into his eyes. Frank's hair was long, too, but appeared shorter because it curled in ringlets all over his head. With his pink cheeks and curls, he looked babyish, even at 11. If only she could have curls like Frank's hair, thought Catherine. She and her sisters, Elizabeth 6, Matilda 4, and Louise 2.5, were all small for their ages and looked as much alike as 4 peas in a pod. Papa said, "Little round faces, fine, straight, light hair, and grayish blue eyes that nobody ever noticed." Everyone noticed Frank's eyes, which were the lively blue of April skies. "I'll go feed the oxen." Papa tramped out after the boys. Catherine watched him cross the room, a stocky man of medium height, with thick, stubby brown hair and a short brown beard that Matilda loved to stroke as she sat on his lap. He had twinkly blue eyes and was always ready to laugh. Catherine loved his big, clever hands, which were equally capable, whether he was welding his blacksmith tools or soothing a sick child. Papa was proud of his 2 yoke oxen, Jake and Ike, Buck and Barney, perhaps because he had never owned oxen before. Next spring, he said, he would buy 4 more so that they would have plenty to spare to pull their big covered wagon to Oregon. Mama came over to the bed where Catherine, Elizabeth, and Matilda were all snuggled in together. She was small but pretty. Her light brown hair, neatly brushed and twisted into a knot at the top of her head, her cheeks pink from the fire and her gray eyes sparkling. She turned back the covers. Now then, chicks, while Papa and the boys are outside, you may come over near the fire to dress. Matilda and Elizabeth burrowed deeper into the feather bed, but Louise, who slept in the cradle between the two big beds, sat up at once and demanded, "Up! Up!" "Wait a few minutes, Louise. Sister will dress you as soon as she can." Catherine struggled into her clothes and took Louise on her lap. She could not remember a time when she had not been dressing or undressing babies. Not that she minded it too much, for she loved every one of them, but Elizabeth might help sometimes. Elizabeth, though, was awkward with buttons and buttonholes, and before she had done the last of her own, Catherine had finished both Louise and Matilda. The good smell of coffee filled the room as Mamma bent over the fire, stirring the breakfast mush bubbling in the big black iron kettle. Catherine led the two smallest girls to the wash bench by the door, scrubbing their faces briskly, brushed their baby fine hair back from their faces, and tied strips of blue calico around their heads. The bows on top looked almost as pretty as the bows they wore on Sunday. "Go give Mamma a kiss," she commanded. She and Elizabeth brushed their own hair and each braided their pigtails. They, too, went to kiss Mamma. She hugged them up close. "My helpers, what would I do without you? Now, all slide into your places. Papa will be here in a minute." The children sat on the benches at each side of the table. Papa and Mamma had chairs at the end. While they waited, Catherine looked around the one room of their new house. The two beds at the end and the long table down the center almost filled it. Mamma's cherry wood chest, her dearest possession, was pushed against the wall next to the ladder. "Where will you put your loom, Mamma?" Catherine asked. "We can squeeze it in beside the window." Papa had wanted to leave the loom behind. "You know we can't take it to Oregon," he had said. "I know, but I want to use it this winter," he had been Mamma's reply. He had grumbled a bit because he had to take it all apart to get it in the wagon, but he had done it. When Mamma insisted, he almost always did what she wanted, but he would not yield about their going to Oregon. He wanted to go last spring when he heard the missionary Dr. Marcus Whitman was guiding immigrants across the plains. But Matilda was sick with a strange lump on her knee, so he had to give up his plan. All that spring, while wagons passed their farmhouse every day, Papa taking people to St. Louis to start across the plains. Papa had worked over Matilda's knee. Friends called him Dr. Sager, though he was not a real doctor like Dr. Whitman. His father and grandfather had been skilled for caring for sick folk and had taught him all that they knew. For a wedding present, his father had given him Dr. Gunn's book, The Family Doctor, which told all about every kind of sickness and what to do for it, and people were always coming to him for help. By midsummer, Matilda had been well again, but then Papa said it was too late to go to Oregon that year. Mamma said that it was good. She did not want to go at all. Catherine remembered the day, only a few weeks ago, when Papa had come home from town very much excited. "Naomi, I've sold the farm. We'll move near St. Joseph this fall to be ready to start for Oregon in the spring. I hear more people will be going than went this year." "I'd hoped you'd given up that idea." "Only postponed it because Matilda was sick." "But how do we dare start out with 6 young children when we don't even know whether a wagon can go through to Oregon?" "Dr. Whitman says—" "I hate that Dr. Whitman. I wish I had never heard of him." Papa put his arm around her. Naomi, it is for you I want to go. Dr. Whitman said that in Oregon, nobody has the chills and fever the way you do every year. Wouldn't you like it to feel so well? Of course I would, but I wish I could wait until the children are older. What if we have another baby next spring? Papa looked surprised. Then he shrugged. If we do, we won't be the only ones. If people waited around to be through having babies, they'd never get to Oregon. All right, Naomi, I'll admit it. It is for myself as well as for you that I want to go. I've wanted it for years, and you know it. I know you are a sagger. They all have itchy feet. Your sister told me about it. Your great-grandfather in Switzerland felt he had to move to Germany, and your grandfather had to come across the ocean to this country, and your father could not bear to stay in his nice home in Virginia, so he moved to Ohio. And then you had to leave Ohio for Missouri. Papa grinned while Mama went on. We've been here 5 years and have such a nice farm. I can't bear to give it up. Who knows what sort of place we'll find out there in Oregon if we live to get there? Somehow, I have a feeling we never will. That's not like my stout-hearted Naomi. What is stout-hearted, Papa? Catherine asked. It means brave and determined to finish what you begin. Are we children stout-hearted? Of course, all the Saggers have been stout-hearted, or great-grandfather would never have gotten to Germany, or grandfather to the United States, or my father to Ohio, or we here to Missouri. Now we are heading for the Willamette Valley in Oregon. We'll have to be stout-hearted to get there, but we will. Remember, stout-hearted means brave and determined to finish what you start. Is that a real promise? Mama asked. It is. I'll build you the best house you have ever had. Can I have a parlor with no beds in it? You certainly can, and whatever furniture you want, I'll make it for you. A hutch cupboard for my new dishes? Papa looked startled. What new dishes? The ones I'm going to buy with the money I've earned doing embroidery and sewing for other people these last 5 years. Why do you think I was doing it? I guess I never noticed you were. I have enough for the dishes right now, and I'll need a hutch cupboard to keep them in. Papa shook his head. All right, I'll make you a hutch cupboard and a new table and a chair for everyone in the family, and beds and bedsteads for all the beds. No more straw ticks on the floor. How about that? He laughed and tickled her chin. By this time, Mama was laughing too, and Catherine felt better about going to Oregon. Papa had agreed they could take their furniture as far as St. Joseph, but when it came to packing the wagon for Oregon, everything heavy would have to be left behind. Except for my cherry wood chest, Mama insisted. Henry, I simply cannot leave that. My mother gave it to me, and she had it from her mother. That is one thing you cannot make. All right, we'll take that and our 2 chairs. That is all we have room for. Except my new dishes, of course. We can buy dishes in Oregon. How do you know they'll have stores out there? Naomi, use a little common sense. Dishes are too heavy to take. Besides, they probably would get broken. Mama had said no more, but every now and then Catherine had seen her counting the money she kept in an old sock, so she knew Mama was not giving up about her dishes. Papa also wanted to leave behind the great sack of woolen rags Mama had been saving. She never threw away any old clothes. When they could no longer be patched or made over, she put them in a sack, saying that she would weave a rag rug or carpet someday. So this winter is when I'll do it. she told Papa. "I'll have a nice new carpet for my new house in Oregon. I'll weave it with long strips, and we can roll it in the canvas to sit on in the wagon." Right after breakfast on this first morning in the new home, Papa and the boys set up the loom, and Mama began to string the warp and make the new carpet. She liked to weave and hummed as she worked. Catherine thought she seemed almost happy about going to Oregon. Papa was happy too. He set up his usual blacksmith shop in an open shed near the house, and before long he had plenty of business making wagon tires, plowshares, horseshoes. It seemed as if everyone was planning to go to Oregon in the spring. After supper each evening, Mama gathered the children around the table for an hour of school. She had been a teacher before she married Papa and had a few readers, spellers, and arithmetic books. "I hope there will be school in Oregon," she said. "The boys have gone almost as far as I can take them." "Sure there'll be a school," Papa replied. "Must be some teachers among the emigrants. Wouldn't surprise me if there was an academy or college in Oregon someday." John's eyes shone and Catherine asked, "Could I be a teacher like Mama?" "Why not?" Papa was so happy to think that they were going that he was ready to hope and believe anything. As the months passed, the Sager family had such a good time together that Mama said it was the happiest winter they had ever known. Then, all too soon, it was over. All right, my friends. Today in today in our Zoom meeting, I am going to show you what we're going to fill out in this book. So if you will have that at our Zoom meeting today, and I will see you at 11 a.m. I miss you, my friends. I can't wait to see your faces. Bye.